I'm sure by now you know everything that there is to know about the Skoda Kayak, but this is Skoda's most important model for India yet. So let's get right down to driving it and see what it's really like out in the real world. The Kayak is the third car to come from the MQB A0iM family after the Slavia and Kushaq. So it shares most of its components with those cars, but with changes made for this more compact package. Now if you're looking for that SUV-like experience from behind the wheel, even in this compact package, then the Kayak immediately has you covered. All the controls are very easy to reach. Like I mentioned, the buttons are very tactile. So getting used to this car is very simple. And you also have that big flat bonnet out in front of you. So again, with its compact dimensions, placing this in traffic or just on the road is really quite simple. And then of course you have these seats. We've spent a lot of time driving Skoda cars and thankfully they haven't really messed with the seats, and genuinely we've already done close to 100 kilometers today and we show no signs of fatigue. The Skoda Kayak can be had with the now familiar 1-litre turbo petrol with its 116 PS and 175 Nm. This puts it right in the ballpark of the other turbo petrols in this segment, although there is no naturally aspirated option. The gearbox options are straightforward too. You have a 6-speed manual or the Aisin-sourced 6-speed torque converter, but the differences show on the move. Skoda has over time made a lot of improvements to it since when the Kushaq came out, and by now it really does show. Yes, on the outside it's still a bit clattery, it doesn't sound great, and you do notice the seat back sometimes shaking, but when you start moving off the line, all of those vibrations, those things that sort of took away from the otherwise premium driving experience, all of that has been definitely brought under control. It's much tighter now, it's much more refined now. So like we've seen before, it gets off the line easily enough. There is enough low-end performance. So say when you're driving the manual, you're driving the automatic now, but we spent a lot of time driving the manual. So when you are driving the manual, you have enough low-end torque to sort of not get bogged down in traffic, and in the automatic, yeah, you have that sense of linear performance throughout. So yeah, you really start getting that boost say at about 1700 RPM, and then it really hits its stride at say over 3,500 RPM. But in regular driving you won't really be going there. So within the mid-range where you will spend a lot of time, it has that punch, it has that sort of get up and go that you need in an everyday city car. The manual harnesses this performance, and the one enthusiasts should look towards. The motor's responses are sharper with this gearbox. It also helps that Skoda has tuned this gearbox well. Yes, the clutch travel is a bit too long, but it engages smoothly. The lever falls to hand easily, and it's easy to slot into gears without too much guidance. The action has a crisp nature as well. The low-end torque also means that in traffic you don't need to change gears too often. The Kayak takes speed breakers easily enough in second gear. Further on, the tall gearing means that it could have been more enjoyable to skip through the gears, but the SUV is usually not very stressed at higher speeds. Skoda has also done work on making the automatic a bit nicer to use. So yes, it still stutters a bit at low speeds and the crawl is still brisk, but both less so than before. You also notice that shifts are better managed. That said, it's still not as sharp as some of the DCTs in this segment. You do have to plan for slower reactions during heavy throttle inputs. The sport mode does make things a bit sharper and the paddle shifters are quicker still. But you find that it upshifts automatically before the red line or won't give you a high rev downshift. But for most users, the gearbox does the job. But really what stands out with the Kayak is the way it handles. If you are one who misses a lot of these fast, fun hatchbacks, then, or if you want an SUV but you don't want to compromise on a fun handling car, then this might be the car for you in the sub 4 meter segment. We already knew that the Slavia and the Kushaq were good handling cars, but with the shortened wheelbase and generally the squarer architecture that the Kayak now has, it's really become more engaging to drive. So you notice it pretty much immediately. It has just that little bit more litheness, a little bit more agility. It feels sprightly on its feet. It feels like, it wants to take corners a bit more eagerly than say the Kushaq did or the Slavia did. And yeah, so that really makes you feel, especially if you like driving, to just go a little bit quicker, have a bit more fun with it. And the steering, of course, just plays ball. It's quite well tuned. It's not overly light like how it was in the Kushaq, so it's still quite direct, but there's a bit more heft or the heft. It leans rather than rolls, but this too is well controlled for a high riding car. You have a sense of connection to the road that many other SUVs lack. This also shows on a high-speed cruise. The steady taut feeling from the Kushaq and Slavia have been brought here without much change. So you will be able to do long intercity trips without feeling tired at the end of it. Sure, there is still some of that underlying firmness that is a trait of these Skoda cars, but this has been reduced from earlier. You aren't thrown around over a broken road as much as in the Kushaq, and the tough structure seems like it will take quite a battery. That said, the Kailack also tends to hit its bump stops when you take a speed breaker a touch too quickly. Otherwise, at high speeds and on fairly smooth surfaces, you have a pliant if not cushy sense that feels comfortable without feeling wallowy. Skoda also seems to have toned down quite a bit of the sharpness from the brake pedal. Now the interiors of the Kailack, they don't spring too many surprises, but whatever Skoda has done is definitely a step up. Now one of the things that we liked with the Slavia and the Kushaq is the sheer quality that Skoda managed to bring to this mainstream segment. Yes, you don't have the most amount of soft materials, but the finish, the fit and the kind of plastics that were used were really the best in the segment every time we fitted these cars against their rivals with the Kailack. And in fact, things have taken a slight step forward. So while a lot of the parts have been shared with the Kushaq, you can see the instrument cluster, the steering wheel, all of these AC vents, the controls and so on. It's very familiar, but some small touches have been made that have improved the space. For example, this surface here with this texture finish, this surface here with this texturing, or the bits of green that Skoda has added here on the vents and even on this floating kind of armrest on the doors. They really give you a more modern feel. It brings the Kailack in line with the newest Skodas and just generally lifts the ambience in what is going to be a low-cost segment, of course, and it just brings a level of quality and finish that, to be honest, we haven't seen in this segment before. The 8-inch instrument cluster is a straight lift, and like in the Slavia and Kushaq, it's functional and heavily customizable, but could be better with its sub-menus. The 10-inch touchscreen now has a more colourful skin, which we think wasn't really necessary, especially since the new colour palette isn't consistently implemented. But more importantly, it now adds an inbuilt navigation function. The wireless Android Auto Apple CarPlay functions also continue. The Kailack's case has been helped immensely with it being based on a C-segment SUV where practicality is concerned. It's a wide car, so you don't sit too close to the doors or the other passenger in the front. Now you have a lot of those clever features that Skoda touts a lot in their cars, and again a bit more has been done over the Kushaq. To start with, you have this really quite neat arrangement within your glove box where you have this removable sunglasses holder. And then while this arrangement is very similar to the Kushaq, again it's very practical. For example, you have a small space here, your cup holders with the grip to open bottles, a fairly deep cubby here, and those very deep and useful door pockets and these ticket holders. And yes, the Kailack again is not top draw in terms of features, but I think some of the bits could have been better executed. For example, these are things that we've been asking Skoda to fix for a while. For example, the rear view camera, again, it's really not up to par in this segment. And if you notice this horn, it really doesn't fit the overall image that this car is producing. Here's a look at the features that the Skoda Kailack offers and also what it offers in terms of safety. Now stepping into the Kailack is a bit of a hassle because as you notice the doors don't open very wide and this opening here is not the biggest. Yes, that is a problem for many sub 4 meter SUVs, but that is something that you should take into account. But having said that, once you're inside with the 2566mm wheelbase, this is one of the larger cars in terms of space in the backseat in this segment for sure. Only the 3XO is probably bigger in terms of wheelbase, and that really does show in the cabin. For example, as you can see, I have good space to tuck my feet underneath the front seats. They're lifted up just like in the Kushaq. And yeah, even though the wheelbase is about 85mm less than the Kushaq, you can see I have a good deal of knee room as well. Now the seats, they seem to have been taken straight off the Kushaq, and that's a very good thing because you have that great support. So my thigh support is really quite nice. I'm held together in that contouring, as you can see here, so I'm cocooned together really quite well. And yeah, the seat back angle too is quite nice, so long journeys will be very comfortable in this car. Another thing that goes in the Kailak's favor is its width. As you can see, it's again slightly wider in fact than the Kushaq, and that really does show. So if I were to sit in the middle seat, yes, this tunnel sort of gets in the way a little bit, but for a medium-sized journey, you can spend time 3 people abreast here at a stretch. Now, keeping with that theme is the kind of headroom I have. Yes, you don't get a panoramic sunroof like some rivals give you, but as you can see, headroom is again adequate. Of course, if you're over 6 feet tall, it's going to be a slight bit of a crouch. And then you have some of the amenities here. You have this neat pocket where you can put your mobile phone. It's one of those smart features that Skoda keeps putting. You have 2 Type-C charge ports, air vents of course, and this center armrest. The Kailak is unique in the sense that it is the first ICE Skoda to carry this new family face. So while it now follows the popular split headlamp theme, it is a smart look. The more compact grille design incorporated with the DRLs and the blocky air dam give it a good deal of presence. The squarish stance looks good too, especially with the blocky bonnet design and upright glass area. Unlike some other sub-4 meter SUVs, the Kailak looks proportionate. The bodywork is simple, but the slight kink and bulge below the rear window adds to the aggression. This cohesive sense is also seen at the rear. The compact LED light cluster is crisp, but the grey band and contoured bootlet make for a compact sporty look. Now at 446 litres, the boot of the Kailak is actually much larger than that of the Kushaq. Now with the Kailak, even though it's much smaller than the Kushaq, Skoda has managed a much larger boot space. Of course, there's some trickery with the measurements, but it's also genuinely useful. For example, this big bag, trolley, I can put it lengthways, which is very useful, say, on a road trip with a family. And a weekend's worth of luggage will be very easily swallowed. And you can also fold down the second row. It's got a 60-40 split to give you over 1200 litres. Yes, the Skoda Kailak can't quite compete with the big hitters in this segment in terms of its features list and powertrain options. But other than this, there's not much to fault here, especially since Skoda has got the pricing right. The smart looks and cabin ambience, good space and solid driving experience stand out. That it also happens to be the car that enthusiasts will like the most in this segment is a good bonus to have, whether you call yourself one or otherwise.